Have you ever wondered what shaped Theodore Roosevelt into the man who would become one of America's most influential presidents? Born into a prosperous New York City family in 1858, Roosevelt's early years were steeped in privilege. Yet they were not without struggle. As a child, he battled severe asthma, an experience that instilled an indomitable spirit and a fierce determination to overcome any obstacle. His curiosity and thirst for knowledge led him to Harvard University. Here he thrived, delving into the worlds of science, philosophy, and rhetoric. It was at Harvard that he began to form the ideas and beliefs that would guide his life and shape his future career. Roosevelt's early years were not just about overcoming personal adversity or excelling in academia. They were about the shaping of a character, the forging of a future leader. These early experiences laid the foundation for the man Roosevelt would become, a relentless fighter and a passionate scholar. Did you know Roosevelt was a war hero before he became president? Indeed, Theodore Roosevelt's military service during the Spanish-American War is a testament to his bravery and leadership. As the lieutenant colonel of the 1st U.S. Volunteer Cavalry, better known as the Rough Riders, Roosevelt was a force to be reckoned with. His most notable feat came at the Battle of San Juan Hill, where he led a charge that turned the tide of the conflict. Faced with daunting odds, Roosevelt and his men charged up the hill, overcoming the enemy and securing a key victory for the United States. His courage under fire was remarkable, inspiring his men to fight with all their might. Roosevelt's leadership in the battlefield was nothing short of extraordinary. His fearlessness, determination, and tactical acumen were key factors in the success of the Rough Riders during the war. Roosevelt emerged from the war a national hero, setting the stage for his political career. In what ways did Roosevelt transform American society? This question brings us to Theodore Roosevelt's tenure as president, a time marked by his progressive domestic policies. His presidency ushered in what we now refer to as the Progressive Era, a period of significant social and political reform in the United States. Roosevelt's approach to the presidency was one of assertive leadership and active reform. Big business, in particular, was a primary target of his progressive policies. He believed in the power of the government to regulate the economy and curb the excessive power of corporations. The trust-busting campaigns, for instance, were a direct challenge to the unchecked power of corporate trusts that had grown dominant in the American economy. However, Roosevelt's progressivism wasn't only about regulating big businesses. He was also a strong advocate for workers' rights. He believed that the government had a role to play in improving working conditions, reducing work hours, and ensuring fair wages. His presidency saw significant strides in labor legislation, including laws to regulate child labor and establish an 8-hour workday. Roosevelt was also deeply committed to consumer protection. He championed the passage of the Pure Food and Drug Act and the Meat Inspection Act, both aimed at protecting consumers from the harmful practices of the food and drug industries. These laws marked a turning point in the government's role in safeguarding public health. The Progressive Era under Roosevelt was a time of sweeping change, a turning point in American history. It was a period when the government began to take a more active role in regulating the economy, protecting workers, and safeguarding consumers. It was a time when the balance of power began to shift, albeit slowly, from big businesses towards the ordinary citizen. Roosevelt's progressive policies reshaped the American economy and society, marking a new era of government intervention and regulation. His presidency set the stage for the role of the government as we understand it today as a force to protect and serve the people, not just the interests of the powerful. How did Roosevelt protect America's natural treasures for future generations? This is a question that takes us deep into the heart of Theodore Roosevelt's legacy as a conservationist. An ardent lover of the outdoors, Roosevelt believed in the intrinsic value of nature and made it his mission to preserve it. He established an unprecedented number of national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges, laying the groundwork for America's extensive system of protected lands that we enjoy today. Roosevelt didn't just create these protected areas, he championed a new way of thinking about nature. He was one of the early voices in the conservation movement, advocating for the wise use of natural resources and the preservation of America's wilderness for the enjoyment of future generations. His belief in the importance of conservation extended to his policies, shaping environmental policy for years to come. Roosevelt's legacy as a conservationist is still evident today in the vast expanses of protected land across America. How did Roosevelt take on the corporate giants of his time? Theodore Roosevelt was a man of action, especially when it came to taming the monopolies and corporate powerhouses of his era. As president, he made it his mission to level the economic playing field and protect the public from the unchecked power of big businesses. He initiated a series of landmark antitrust cases that would forever change the landscape of American business. One prime example was the dissolution of Standard Oil, a massive corporation that Roosevelt saw as a threat to fair competition. He also took on the Northern Securities Company, a colossal railroad trust, and successfully managed to break it apart. Roosevelt's antitrust policies sent a clear message: corporate power should never overshadow the public interest. His efforts led to greater regulation, more competition, and ultimately, a healthier economy. So when we talk about Roosevelt, we must remember him as a trustbuster. Roosevelt's trust-busting campaigns marked a groundbreaking shift in the relationship between government and business. What role did Roosevelt play on the world stage? Well, Theodore Roosevelt was not just a national figure, but a global one. As president, he steered America's foreign policy with a firm hand, expanding the country's influence beyond its borders. Roosevelt's foreign policy was characterized by a unique blend of diplomacy and assertiveness. He believed in the power of negotiation but wasn't afraid to flex America's military muscle when necessary. This approach was encapsulated in his famous dictum, "Speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far." A significant highlight of Roosevelt's diplomatic career was his mediation in the Russo-Japanese War. This conflict between two emerging powers threatened global peace, but Roosevelt stepped in to broker a resolution. His efforts led to the Treaty of Portsmouth, effectively ending the war. This was a monumental achievement, showcasing the United States' ability to mediate in international disputes and marking the country's arrival as a global power. Roosevelt's diplomatic prowess wasn't limited to Asia. He also made his mark in the Western Hemisphere with the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. The original Monroe Doctrine, established in the early 19th century, declared that European powers should not interfere in the affairs of the Western Hemisphere. Roosevelt expanded on this concept, asserting that the United States had the right to intervene in the affairs of Latin American nations to preserve order and stability. This policy, controversial as it was, set a new course for American foreign policy, making the country a more assertive actor in the region. In conclusion, Theodore Roosevelt's diplomatic efforts were instrumental in expanding American influence abroad. His successful mediation in the Russo-Japanese War and his assertive policy in the Western Hemisphere demonstrated America's growing power on the world stage. Roosevelt's diplomatic efforts set a precedent for American involvement in international affairs, and with that, the world saw a new side of the United States, a diplomatic force to be reckoned with. What is the enduring legacy of Theodore Roosevelt? As we delve into this question, we find ourselves faced with a man who left a profound impact on the American landscape, both literal and political. Roosevelt's influence on American politics, society, and culture is deep-rooted and far-reaching. His progressive policies set a new standard for the role of the government in safeguarding the rights of its citizens. His trust-busting efforts redefined the relationship between big businesses and the government, serving as a reminder that unchecked corporate power can be tempered by robust governance. Furthermore, Roosevelt's influence extended to future presidents and political leaders. His approach to governance, balancing power between the state and federal government, informed the political strategies of his successors. His tenacity and unyielding dedication to public service have been a beacon of inspiration for leaders across the political spectrum. His legacy as a champion of progressivism continues to be felt today. His belief in the power of the people and the responsibility of the government to protect and serve its citizens remains a cornerstone of American political ideology. His efforts to regulate big business and protect workers' rights laid the groundwork for many of the social safety nets and regulatory frameworks we have today. Moreover, Roosevelt's dedication to conservation has left an indelible mark on the American landscape. His commitment to preserving the nation's natural beauty and resources established a precedent for environmental stewardship that is still followed today. His foresight in establishing national parks, forests, and wildlife refuges ensured that future generations could enjoy the country's natural wonders. Finally, his belief in American exceptionalism, that America has a unique role to play in the world, shaped the nation's foreign policy for the 20th century and beyond. His diplomacy, notably his mediation of the Russo-Japanese War, demonstrated that America could be a global peacemaker. Theodore Roosevelt, a man of many roles. A war hero, a progressive reformer, a conservationist, a trustbuster, and a diplomat. His influence continues to shape America, making him one of the most impactful figures in American history.